If we have technical challenges, what I may have to do is record and do a subsequent. So I'm giving you the disclaimer. We have rolling power outages because of our drought situation here in Ecuador. Um, I'll come back and introduce myself, but let me give you the disclaimer. And hopefully the signal will be able to be steady enough. I'm on low bandwidth right now, and it gets more difficult when we've got the outages because of the demand on the cellular data network.
Did you
So
lose? Did you
my
go ahead
apologies.
and you went ahead and lost power as we were talking? Did you lose power?
Absolutely, of course, of course, of
I'm like,
course.
wait, it is
Which then
darker over there, and you have your flashlight on.
I have the lamp, and so it puts extra strain on the cell signals that run when they roll out. So
All
it's
right,
unpredictable, and that really is
no
just
problem.
one of those things of life that we
We
roll
got
with.
you now.
So
Go
let me
ahead, hit
introduce.
roll. Now, I will
Yep,
tell
you got
you,
to record.
I hit record. I will tell you that I may have a hard time sharing when I share with
Why don't we wait till the end to do the video so that if there's any problems, they'll be able to see pictures and video, and we'll just roll with that. And if
yeah.
we have to re-record it to be able to upload it, just thank you for your patience in advance that we may have technical difficulties tonight. Push the record,
It,
Christina, so if we
we're
do get it
recording.
through. We're on record. Excellent. Well, let me give you the brief. Let me introduce myself. I'm Lorana Hughes. As you heard in my disclaimer, I am in Cuenca, Ecuador. And it's a joy to be with you again. I can't quite see who's here, but if you haven't joined me for one of our virtual field trips, welcome in this evening. And this evening, I'm really excited because we're still in holiday festive mode. And I'm excited to bring you one of the holidays that I am learning more about, and that's Dia de los Difuntos. It's Day of the Departed, which is very similar in to some of the Day of the Dead, but November 2nd is that celebration day for us, but it also coincides with Independence Day. So we have been in holiday mode since Thursday. The president, normally it would be Friday through today, but the president issued a mandate, an order that Thursday was an additional holiday, like for getting ready for the holiday festivities. So we have the Day of the Departed, as well as the Cuenca Independence Day, which has been happening for days. And so this has just been one of the high festivity times. This particular the past 4 or 5 days as people get ready. There's been parades, there's been fireworks, there's been dancing in the street. It's been a fabulous time. But let me tell you about today. I want to introduce you to the Dia de los Difuntos. I want to talk to you about some of the symbolism and the meaning of it, but also some of the part which I enjoy immensely, which is the sweet treats and the food that goes along with so many holidays, this one included, and talk a little bit about that. So thanks for joining me, and hopefully we will stay connected as you hear about the Day of the Departed. It's celebrated a little bit of a different way here in Cuenca, Ecuador. Different a little bit than in Mexico or other Latin American areas. And this beautiful holiday, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is held on November 2nd. And it's a chance for families to come together and remember and honor loved ones who have passed away. So let me start by setting the scene, and I've got some imagery, and we're going to hold that to the end. So use your imagination until we get to that, where you'll be able to see some of the pictures from right here in Cuenca. But imagine that you're walking into a cemetery in Cuenca. Now, the cemetery in Cuenca looks like a mini city, large space, rolling hills, lots of headstones and sculptures and beauty. And
Hey,
you're
quick
walking
question
into
for you
this
guys.
cemetery.
Can everybody see the cemetery? Can someone tell me if they can see it? Because I'm
No,
curious.
absolutely not.
I don't think I
Okay.
don't think
Okay.
they're showing one. I think they're
All right.
saying use your imagination.
Yeah, I know. Well, I pulled it up, so I wanted to just see if it was working that way. Okay, never mind.
It probably lets you share one at a time, one screen at a time.
Yeah.
And so you're walking into this cemetery. Now, it might be in the cool of the morning, but it also could be in the evening time. Sunset here is very consistent. year round. There's about a 30-minute difference in the time that the sun rises and sets, and usually between 6 and 6:30 is sunset. So imagine walking in the cool of the evening, temperatures that are always pleasant year round. If you're walking in the morning time, it's going to be somewhere in the low 60s. If it's in the evening time, it may still be right about that temperature. The graves are decorated with flowers, beautiful flowers in all different colors, but especially the marigolds, whose bright colors are thought to attract the spirits. Candles may be flickering around the gravestones, offering a warm glow and the light that is to guide the souls who may return to visit their families. There's the smell of freshly prepared food, and families are gathering, some setting up small picnics near their loved ones' graves. It's an atmosphere of peace, but also of respect and of love. The Dia de los Difuntos is a unique blend. As you've heard, if you visited any of my other field trips, it's a unique blend of both the Catholic and the indigenous Andean beliefs, making it a little bit different in how it's celebrated here in this particular region. This is a time when family members, they can come in and reconnect with their loved ones that have passed on. While other cultures might see death as really a distant and really a separate part of life, in the Ecuadorian culture and the Andean culture in particular, they embrace death as a continuing presence. They see it as a natural part of the life cycle and believe that the dead continue to play a really important role in protecting and in guiding the living. And so it's a combination of life and those who have departed, but it's the same cycle, not separating. Death is not that sense of separation. The Day of the Departed reflects this view, and it treats the soul of ancestors very much as active parts of the family. One of the interesting things that I'm finding out is many of the Catholic holidays also include some of the indigenous practices, and part of this was an intentional part of the indoctrination of the Catholic Church. One of the most, the holiday itself takes place the day after All Saints' Day, which is a Catholic holiday. And the timing is quite significant because when the Spanish arrived, they brought Catholicism and they introduced holidays like All Souls Day, which is observed on November 2nd. But the indigenous people already had their customs and they had deep-rooted practices of how they chose to honor the dead. And typically their customs got intertwined, and this wasn't by accident. Oftentimes, in an effort to convert them into Catholicism, the holidays co-opted other of the indigenous holidays, and they changed them or altered them so that they fit into the Catholic belief system, while still maintaining a little bit of the culture of the individuals. And one of the things that I'm finding is they infuse, even though they may have been forced to adopt the Catholic rituals and holidays and observance, they were able to maintain the cultural significance by incorporating the components that would have been relevant to the indigenous cultures that they already have been practicing. So they already had these deep-rooted practices of honoring the dead, and so they were intertwined with the Catholic practice of All Saints' Day. The Day of the Departed really reflected both of those, and especially as they're celebrated now, you really can see some of that blending of the aspects of both cultures. One of the aspects of Day of the Departed that, in a sense of continuity, it was about really connecting the generations, both those who have departed and those who are presently living. For families here in Cuenca, during these past couple of days, they visited the cemeteries. And these are traditions for them that would go back generations, that this was a part of how they honored their departed. It's common for them to bring the entire family, children included, so they can learn about the ancestors. They would sit and literally, when I say like bring a picnic, they bring their meal out to the cemetery. They tell stories about the departed. They tell stories about Mama Huaca, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But this is a time for them to really connect with their family history. This is a time that helps to instill, even in their younger generation, a deep respect for the past and really a strong connection to their roots. But it's not just about honoring the dead, and that is so vivid in how these celebrations take place. It's about a celebration of life. The holidays encourage not only the reflection on the cycle of life, but the preciousness of every moment that we have. Like that part of the celebration of this is real obvious and felt. Families gather together, they share meals, they laugh, they remember. That part of celebrating life is very clear. And this blending of both the joy, but also the solemn nature of death makes this holiday really special. It's a time where you see the gratitude and the reminder that one day we all too will join the ancestors in the spirit world. This holiday has customs that highlight really the dual focus of life and death. Families prepare special food that they bring really as offerings, and the food is sometimes placed on the graves as a way of inviting the spirits to join the feast, reinforcing that idea that the dead are still a part of our life. It's still an active part of our family. In fact, for some families, they even arrange a place at the family table for the spirits and they leave food for them. Really a touching way to show that they're still welcome in the family circle.
Hey,
The
quick
thing that
question.
was closest to my remembrance.
How do you decide, like, what if you have multiple family members that have passed on, like grandparents, parents, like, do you decide? Do you like, or do you, will you put a set place setting for all of them? Or I'm like thinking like, whose cemetery plot do you sit on? Do you go to?
Right.
Like,
I don't know. Now, sometimes the plots, like there's family plots, so there's relatives in this. In the church that I was involved in the States, there's family plots. You know, the headstone, this is the such and such family. There's some of that here. I don't know if they pick one ancestor, if they set a whole lot of plates. I'm not really sure. The closest that I can get from my frame of reference is sometimes at various events, individuals that are military will set a place setting for military members who may not have made it back home.
okay.
They may be prisoners of war or individuals who were never retrieved. That is the same kind of sentiment that the place is set for them, except this is just really a part of the family tradition. So it would be like setting the head of the table for Thanksgiving, perhaps, and leaving that place, you know, without a person sitting there and leaving gifts of food there
Mhm.
as an encouragement of the spirits to join or an acknowledgement that you are welcome in this celebration. I don't know how they pick out which family member gets to be honored in that way. Some parts of it, as I saw it, seemed like just the general, all of the ancestors, and it kind of was a grouped in where it was an acknowledgement of the ancestors, plural. So I don't know if there's any other ways. I'll have to ask some of my local family and neighbors what happens if your family's in different places, you know?
Yeah.
What
Well,
if
I was
they're in
just thinking
different parts
maybe
of the
it's
cemetery?
whoever's just passed recently, like maybe the most recent
I'm not
or something,
sure.
you
I'll
know?
have to ask. Stay tuned. I'll come back and
Yeah.
do a follow
Yeah.
up and give some information on that. In Cuenca, it's also storytelling. One of the events that I went to was at one of the museums that has indigenous artifacts, one of the largest collections. I wanted to record it, but it was done in kind of the dark, and so it was very difficult to see what was happening. But the storytelling, especially about the Mama Huaca, I was very entertained by that. But that's an integral part of passing down not only the family history, but the values and some of the iconic cultural significances of the stories. Parents and grandparents might share memories about their ancestors. This is about preserving the family stories. that are so easy lost. We think of the modern life and how busy we can be, but this is one of those intentional things about making sure that the heritage is passed on. The stories bring the ancestors to life, even to generations that may not have known them. And it's also about keeping the wisdom and the love close to the heart of the new generation. It's really one of the parades during this festival couple of days that we've been having. Even the little children, the preschoolers, came out at the beginning of the parade, and you saw them with the traditional wear on, doing some of the traditional dances. That there's really a connection about making sure that the generations don't lose the wisdom and the stories and the richness of their culture. So as you're hearing, the Day of the Departed in Cuenca is more than just the ritual. It really is the bridge for them. This is the time of year where they bridge between the worlds, a celebration that allows people to connect with those they've lost, while also reminding them to really cherish the present. The way that celebrations are done is about the present moment, and it's wonderful to see. For many families, it can be an emotional time, but it's also one that's comforting. um, Part of their culture is about knowing that their loved ones are not only watching over them, but also guiding and protecting them. And then it's the reminder in real life terms that someday they will be reunited. Um, let's see. Do we want to try to share the screen to a different screen with the cemetery pictures? Okay, let's try that. Yeah. No, just switch screens. Just go to the cemetery pictures and then just share that screen instead, and then you can come back to me. Yeah. And as you're pulling that up, I've got a short video that really shows you it's like a city. This is our patrimonial, our heritage cemetery. It's like a small city. It's mountains, rolling hills, and then there's some still photos of some of the evening celebrations that were happening this year. So take a look at that.
And I was on mute when I was talking. All right, hold on.
Okay.
Right. Let me go back and share here. That just was tricking me. I mean, I guess I can't share more. Okay. All right, so here is the video, and that's playing now.
And I just wanted you to see some of the expansiveness of this particular cemetery here in Cuenca. It's our patrimonial, our heritage cemetery. One of my neighbors unfortunately passed away, and he happens to be Baha'i, so there's a Baha'i section there. There's a Jewish section there. There's family.
Hold on one second, Lorana.
Like
Hold on.
movie.
Can you all hear
Okay.
Lorana speaking?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's make sure. I thought I hit. I don't want to. I'm trying not to mess up anything. All right. So you can hear her speaking and telling you about the Baha'i section and all that stuff.
And there's family like crypts. That's one of the ways that I know families are together. They build like a crypt, and all their families in that little mausoleum.
We are looking at all of the people walking around on this at the cemetery still in the video.
Yeah.
Just the massive scale of the cemeteries.
خدا رحمتشون کنه.
And then in some of the other pictures, the steel pictures, you'll see the stacked tiers.
Yep. Hold
Of,
on one. Okay, I was gonna let the video finish. We got
کل این ردیف
18
چند
seconds.
تا اینجا هم داریم. اینم آقای
See
دکتر
how long and
رحمت الله
massive.
مهاجر.
These cemeteries have American cemeteries are totally different than these. All right. And then here's the image of the cross with all the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stacked with the staircase. What is that?
Yeah. Very efficient.
Is that
Very
mausoleum?
efficient.
That's mausoleums?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Ah, Okay.
And those are individuals versus the family ones.
Right.
And you'll see that the cemeteries have been open till midnight, all during this holiday time because
And then here's
families
the ones
come.
that have like the crypts that are the marble all next to each other.
So
And,
all different styles,
and then the one
both
with the crypts and then like the
brown.
mausoleum behind it.
Hmm. So
And
these cemeteries are like little villages, and people go out and they literally, like you would go to the park on a hillside, and they bring their food, but flowers are everywhere. We're known for roses and orchids and just beautiful flowers. Marigolds are this time of year, sunflowers, and you'll see them just flooded on the areas around the grave are just decorated, kind of like we do at funerals, where sometimes they'll take the flowers out and they'll be all around the graveside. Well, this is what's done during this time, the fresh flowers, and there's vendors that are selling flowers outside of the cemetery all the time, but it's at just such a stepped up level during this particular holiday.
so, question for you, because I'm looking at the picture. Oh, I think it's interesting that these mausoleums are designed differently than the ones that I've seen here. Like here, I've had a family that was buried in mausoleums where it was a big, like marble or granite slab across the top front with their name on. These are like bars, and it looks like you can put all your decorations or whatever even inside of that.
So there's a space there. Some of them will have a door, some of them will have bars, but there's like a space there where they put decorations, they put pictures. Sometimes you'll see,
Yeah, very
as I
interesting.
stroll through, there'll be flowers. There'll be toys, little trinkets, or there'll be a plaque. There'll be poems. There'll be letters left there. Um, just very different, a much more active kind of involvement with them. As you can see, there's those with the stairs that are stacked. Sometimes they're 7, 8 stories. On some of them that you see a second layer and a railing,
Yeah.
there's actually a staircase that goes up to that top layer. And so you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or so layers on the bottom, and then you go up the stairs, and there's another maybe 3 or so layers on top. And so there's a space, and each one of them is a little bit different. Some of them are just flat, but a lot of them are decorated.
Yeah, totally.
As
Very
you can
interesting.
also see, some of the cemeteries that are in the ground, they do like a concrete slab over them. But sometimes it's just a border. There'll be fences, there'll be decorations, there'll be benches, there'll be sculptures or statues. And so each one is really very individual. For my friend being Baha'i, they did gravel, and there's a star there that's got a place for flowers to go in the middle of that. So each one is just a little bit different. The engagement was really interesting to see how engaged people are regularly with their departed. And part of that comes from this set of ideals that their departed are still a part of their life. They're guiding them, they're leading them, they're protecting them.
Do you think that is grieving easier this way? Like with this much emphasis put on honoring their dearly departed ones? Is like
I think so. I think
see a difference?
There's a different kind of connection. This is just a part of life. It's
Right.
the cycle of life, and there's a much greater connectedness with that here. The Lion King song, circle of life, like that is real. And so it's not the loss, I think, is very different in how I see it interpreted here. Like it's just a part of what happens. You live for a period of time, and then you become an ancestor. And so it's not the loss in the way that we think of loss, like I've lost something. Because they're
Right.
still connected with it, their loss it's not a loss, it's a change. You go
Right.
from living to the ancestor realm, and your role changes. And so that's a little bit different than American culture in the way that we present death really as finality. That it's done, you're gone, it's over. Whereas here, it's a continuum. and it's a continuum that just is the accepted part of life. And so I think they approach it very differently.
Very interesting. Yeah.
So now I want to dive deeper into a little bit about the Day of the Departed and the blend of that indigenous and the Catholic influences.
Okay.
Um,
You want me to
the
stop
Day of the
sharing
Departed.
the cemetery pictures and come back to you, or do you
Yes,
want me to go
yes,
to the
you can take
memo?
that. No, take that down for now.
Okay.
We got that working.
Yep,
Perfect.
yep, that's working. All right, now.
When the Spanish colonized Ecuador, it was about the 16th century, they brought their own customs. The Catholic All Saints Day and the All Souls Day are the two holidays that really co-opted the Day of the Departed. These holidays really provided or introduced a much more formalized and religious approach to remembering those who had passed on versus the cultural approach that was not as formal. But before they arrived, the indigenous Andean people, particularly the Quechua and the Cañari cultures, which are in this region, they had long held beliefs on the traditions about the dead and ancestors in the spirit world. And so for them, like I said, it was deeply connected. Life and death are connected in the same way the cosmic balance is. It's the scales, it's the circle, and the active and guiding forces were paired with really the solemn nature of the Catholic traditions, and really bringing those two things, the significance for Catholics with the significance for Andeans, the dead that weren't seen as gone, that instead they're just in another realm, that very different in that the Catholic tended to see the individuals that go into purgatory, and you're helping them get to heaven by praying for them or other kinds of things, but that they join these two cultures in a very interesting way that's called syncretism. We hear that word in religious circles sometimes, of blending the Catholic teachings with the indigenous belief system rather than replacing it completely. Part of what they did was they added another layer to Catholicism. So in getting them to adopt Catholicism, it was saying, here's our culture, here's our traditions, but we'll add another layer that introduces those indigenous cultural pieces to it. The Catholic focus is on the saints, and the souls provide a framework for that, whereas the indigenous concepts of ancestor reverence and the spirit world remain strong and really were adapted into that religious context. For example, in the Catholic tradition, All Souls Day is meant as really a time where you're praying for those that are in purgatory. You're kind of helping them move on up to heaven. The indigenous Andean people, however, saw spirit in a more active role, that these are helpers and guides of the living, and even influencing events on earth, because there's a belief that there's some influence that they can have on things that are happening. And so you merge those two, that while they're not identical, they seem to kind of fit where they could merge these holidays together. And I think it was a way of softening the indoctrination that was happening by helping them hold on a little bit to some of their cultures. What's happened now is we see that much less restricted, where individuals may still have a strong connection with Catholicism, but we see a very strong presence of the indigenous culture and the indigenous practices being honored and celebrated in the way that they might have been, or in an evolution that might have happened from those original traditions outside of the Catholicism. One of the aspects of this holiday is this concept that comes from the Andean tradition of I practice this, ayini, or reciprocity. There's a belief that all of life is about balance and about giving back. And this is not only in the relationships among the living, but also with the departed. So while families bring food offerings like bread babies and colada morada, which I'll tell you about in a minute, to the graves, those are not just gifts for the spirit. Instead, it's this way of maintaining the cosmic balance of the relationships between the living and the dead. It's like saying, thank you for your protection. Here's something for you. You've given to me. Let me give something to you. That word, ayini, is a Quechua word for mutuality, meaning today for you, tomorrow for me. But it suggests an interesting thing I found interesting was that giving comes before receiving. Today for you, tomorrow for me. This is the only commandment of the Incan religion that the Andeans know and keep until this day. Ayini is the thread that really holds the fabric of their culture and their existence together. And that was really moving for me. Today for you, tomorrow for me. It's the give and take, the healthy give and take of community, but specifically, it's starting with giving. Interestingly, the Catholic influence added certain structure to the holiday. Some of the rituals that are incorporated are distinctly Catholic, like one of them, the candles. You'll see candles placed by the headstones, the various burial places in the cemetery. And these candles are to light the way for the spirits, to be able to, the spirits to have light so that as they're coming back to spend time with you, that those candles light the way. And that's a very Catholic practice. But the indigenous practices remain strong, especially things like the food and the stories and the way that they gather and honor the ancestors. For Catholics, another contrast, the setting. For Catholics, the tradition, All Saints' Day, All Souls' Day, is seen as very sacred and quiet, where the dead are resting peacefully. Whereas the indigenous Andean culture, however, the burial sites are less about that separation of death from life and much more about creating a connection with the natural world, connecting the living with the spirit world. Andean people are often see mountains and rivers and even stones as having special spiritual significance for them, the natural world. And as a result, many of the cemeteries are near those kind of elements. It's the way of being able to bridge the world, the natural world, the physical world with the spiritual world. And so when families are at the cemeteries gathering for Day of the Departed, they're really embracing the idea that they're not just remembering their ancestors, they're actively participating with them, that their ancestors are there in those moments. It's the lines between the living and the dead that are blurred from Andean culture. And that's a real contrast to the Catholic tradition that's somber, the dead, and a separation from death and those that have departed. For Andean culture, the ancestors are there with you. You know, it's the place setting. You're inviting them to come and be a part of the celebration and this remembrance. But they come together, and really, it is one of those holidays that really has deep connection with family and history and legacy and heritage. This also is one of the reasons that Day of the Departed can feel very different depending on the region. Each of the regions has their own influence. They're really the interplay with how the indigenous people dealt with the colonizers' intent to indoctrinate them to Catholicism. As I'm seeing and learning more about some of these holidays, it's really interesting that the way they incorporated their culture really was this kind of bold resistance. You know, like we're going to maintain a connection with our culture because it's important. And it seemed like there were some concessions with the Catholic Church of being able to appease the people by incorporating some of their traditions. But it seems like because of that, they've held on to a very strong, had a very strong hold on the traditions and the culture of their indigenous ways. That is one of the things that as I learn about each of the new holidays, I see that. We talked about some of the storytelling and some of the storytelling is the folklore. One of the most fascinating features that's associated with Dia de los Difuntos in Ecuador is Mama Huaca, and that's spelled Huaca, Mama Huaca. It's a central figure of the mythology, and it's often regarded, Mama Huaca is often regarded as the guardian of the spirits, protector of travelers, families, and communities. And the story about Mama Huaca is filled with themes about protection and guidance, connection to the spirit world, and it really has made that figure a very powerful symbol for this particular holiday. In the indigenous traditions, Mama Huaca was a spiritual figure that lived between the worlds, both the living and the dead. Sometimes she's described as a mountain spirit. Sometimes it's the sacred mother figure, oftentimes with long hair, I think long blonde hair, deeply connected with nature. But sometimes the representation is a light or a wind. She sometimes is referred to as guardians of the spirit because she's said to be the one that watches over the souls when they depart and help guide them on their journey into the spirit world safely. And so because of that, guardian of the spirits is one of the titles that Mama Huaca, or the legend of Mama Huaca, is said to embody. The different forms that she appears in are often shaped by the needs of those who encounter her. She's one of these figures that is a shapeshifter. Sometimes she's an older woman with long hair, and a gentle presence, a more of a feel than really anything else. But sometimes she takes the form of a bird or a shimmering light or even a gust of wind. And so it allows her to appear in whatever way she's needed by the person that may need guidance in the living, or a soul that needs protection or guidance. There's a story about her, one of the folk stories, and so this is story time too. Let me share with you one of the versions of the tale. In one of the versions of the tale of Mama Huaca, a young mother was walking with her child through a remote mountain pass late at night. They were traveling to join their family for the Dia de los Difuntos celebration. The mother was exhausted, as the folk tale goes, and she was worried about her child's safety, as the mountain paths could be very dangerous, especially in the dark. So the mother prayed for protection, calling on Mama Huaca to guide them. As they continued along the path, the mother noticed a soft glow in the distance. It was a light that seemed to be beckoning her forward. She felt an unexpected sense of calm, as though someone was guiding her. As she followed the light, she realized it was leading them around treacherous drops and through narrow, rocky paths. Finally, they arrived at a safe clearing, and the light faded. In that moment, the mother felt a presence near her, a sense of love and protection that she couldn't explain. The next morning, she discovered that others had also seen similar lights along the path, and they too felt guided by the unseen force. The villagers told her it was the spirit of God, who often appears as a guiding light to those in need. Since that day, the mother and her child always include offerings for Mama Huaca at Dia de los Difuntos, which is an acknowledgement of the gratitude for the spirit that has kept them safe. And so I listened to that story, and I even saw it acted out one evening at one of the celebrations that I went to. And really, Mama Huaca is a symbol of the strength and the support of ancestors. Her story really reflects the belief from the Andean indigenous people that even when we're separated from our loved ones by death, their spirit is still close to us, watching us, guiding us, protecting us, which is the theme of this holiday. That her presence is a reassuring spirit, letting people know that they're not alone, and that the spirits of the ancestors remain active and active participants in their life. For the indigenous people, Mama Huaca is a reminder of that connection really between the living and the dead, and reminding people that that connection is unbreakable, no matter the distance between them. In modern day, on the Day of the Departed celebrations, families will leave small offerings for Mama Huaca, flowers or food. And that's a way of thanking her for the protective role. Again, that give and take, thanking her for the protection she's already given them over the departed and the living alike. Some families tell stories to their younger children. Again, part of maintaining the culture and the heritage with the younger generations. As I was listening to the storyteller a couple of nights ago, he brought some of the children into the story. One of them, he dressed up as Mama Huaca and gave her the baby to carry. The little boy was following the path and following the light. And so part of this is how they help their younger generations hold on to this wisdom and the connection that these stories and these folk tales really are reflecting on. It reminds children and adults both the importance of respecting both the natural world and the spirit world, of honoring those who have died, but also honoring life. And it reinforces that idea of Aini that we talked about earlier, really honoring, giving thanks for the guidance, that completion of circle of give and take that we do. It's more than just the myth, the Mama Huaca. It really is a symbol for the love and protection that ties families together, even across generations and including generations that have parted. And she really is an important, really a crucial part of the celebrations. So that symbology. There's a short clip. It's in Spanish with subtitles, just about a minute and a half, and gives you kind of some of the imagery of it. And so let's see if we can get that to play, Christina, now,
Okay.
that video of Mama Huaca story.
All right.
About a minute and a half.
All right. You guys let me know if you have sound. I forgot again to check to make sure I had the sound. Lorana, go ahead and talk for a second. Let me make sure we have sound.
One of the
Right. That's fine.
evening
We
events.
all hear her?
Got it?
Can we hear
You
her?
hear me? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes,
I'm
we
waiting.
can hear you.
Okay.
Thumbs up? Okay.
Thank you for all helping with our technical support.
I know.
Right.
This is a team effort today.
Team effort.
Yes,
All right,
yes.
here's
I
the video.
appreciate it.
I'm
Perfect.
gonna leave it just like this. Don't mind all this stuff on the side.
¿Has escuchado
Okay.
sobre la leyenda de la Mama Huaca? Ella es una anciana que vive en los cerros, guardiana de valiosos tesoros como mazorcas de oro, que los entrega a la gente a cambio de niños sin bautizar. Esta leyenda, relatada por las abuelas, previene a los nietos sobre los riesgos que traen consigo la desobediencia a los padres y aconseja a los que son muy andariegos o malcriados. Se dice que la anciana ciega vive en las alturas del lugar, rodeada de riquezas que las esconde en lo más alto de su casa. La oscuridad y circunstancias extrañas atraen a visitantes, a quienes Mama Huaca los atiende con afecto. En su aposento encantado, posa vestida con un rebozo shiro, sucio y harapiento, siempre en compañía de una hermosa joven doncella. A la Mama Huaca se le atribuye tantas tareas, desde conseguir marido hasta que en sus tardes de soledad, en una paila de agua hirviendo, pela a los niños para luego comerlos poco a poco. Tiene 4 perros grandes, amarrados con cadenas de oro y siempre hambrientos, que hacen de fieles guardianes. Cuando encuentra a un hombre, lo seduce, lo persuade, hasta llevarlo a su casa, donde le ofrece pócimas y más afrodisíacos, que hacen que el hombre se enamore de la mayor, al punto de hacerse su propio marido. Pero cuando el hombre se entera de las artimañas, quiere escapar. Una versión diferente cuenta que Mama Huaca engordó a unos niños que los encontró perdidos. Los acogió con la intención de comerlos, pero un ratón les advierte lo que ha visto y los prepara para el momento en que les pida que le enseñe el dedo meñique, para saber si ya están gorditos. Los niños le muestran a Mama Huaca el rabo del ratón, por lo que ella creerá que están flacos todavía.
And let me know when it finishes.
Okay, that
It's
finished.
done now.
Okay. So
You have
you can
asked for
see,
that.
yeah, you could see the imagery and just some of the pictures of what that would
Le muestra
represent, Mama
para
Huaca.
el momento en que les pida
And
que le enseñe el
the
dedo
part
meñique.
that thrills me is that the celebrations here, all throughout the year, each one seems to have a different food. During Carnival, there's a certain soup. During Corpus Christi, there's a different specific soup, and like it's only made and served during that part of the year. Well, this part of the year is one of my favorites, simply because of the name. Guagua de Pan is also translates bread babies. And Christine, if you want to go ahead and just scroll through the photos and then start those videos to play in the background, that'll be fine.
Okay.
But this is the exciting part. One, because I love food. Two, it's just exciting because the playfulness of it. We're going to talk about the bread babies, guagua de pan, and the warm colada morada. You may be familiar with pina colada. Pina means pineapple. Morada is purple. And so this is the purple colada and the bread babies. If that doesn't just sound like something special and fun, like that just gets me going. And they're really, it's more than just treats. They too are a symbol of this connection and the memory and the shared experiences of honoring the dead. And I'll start with the guagua de pan. And I actually have some. There's still the last couple of days.
All right. We're
So
looking
there
now
are
at the
these kind
pictures of the bread babies.
Okay. Oh, so you see them. Okay, so you see the bread babies. They're a sweet bread, and they're bread like pastries, a little bit sweet, and sometimes they have fillings, and they're made shaped to look like a swaddled infant. Often they're decorated with colorful icing, and sometimes it's filled with fruity jam or cream that would be kind of like sweetened condensed milk would be, that kind of creamy that they make like a candy out of. The name guagua is Quichua, and that's the word for baby. So literally, these are bread babies, and while they may look playful and whimsical, they really do have significant meaning. They represent the souls of the departed, especially younger family members or ancestors who are believed to need guidance and care on their journey to the spirit world. In a sense, shaping the bread to form the baby is really a way of caring for these souls. That's really the symbolic connection, showing a nurturing connection that goes beyond death. So the guagua de pan, or the bread babies, also remind families of their loved ones' innocence, the warmth of human bonds, something that's comforting during the holiday. The tradition of making these breads dates back centuries, and really it combines the indigenous and the Catholic influences again. In pre-Hispanic Andean traditions, people would make figurines or effigies to represent the dead. They sometimes would bury them in the earth. The Catholic influence, though, introduced the making of effigies out of bread. And so some of the artifacts that I saw in the museum, they would be effigies out of like clay. The Catholic influence was about making them out of bread, something sacred and nourishing. If you think of things like communion, the bread, the symbology for the Catholic Church tied to the bread. And so it was really co-opting their traditions and the synergy again between the two, symbolizing really the ideal of living bread that provides for both the living and the spirits. And so it really is that merging where it becomes something different than it might have been in pre-Hispanic Andean traditions, but that those symbols have persisted. And then we have the colada morada, which is the rich purple. It's kind of a thick drink. If you think of like a thickened drink that has fruit cocktail in it, they cook the
I was
fruit
gonna
in
ask
it.
you. I
Different
was gonna say, do you want me to play those two videos yet? Or right now we're looking at
Yeah,
that picture of the bread
yeah.
baby with
No,
that
just
drink.
play it in the background. Nope, just play those in the background because part of that was showing you how they're made, and some of the while I talk, you'll kind of see
Okay.
what's happening and understand it a little bit better. But they take purple corn flour, some of the purple corn, they grind it up into a flour, and they mix that with spices. You'll see in some of the pictures some of the spices and fruits and herbs. Some of the main ingredients include our version of blackberry. Really, it looks like a cross between a blackberry and a mulberry, but we call them mora berries. Blueberries. There's another type of berry that they call the same thing as blueberry, but it's a very small berry that looks just like blueberries in miniature. Pineapple, herbs like cinnamon and clove, and lemon verbena is an herb that is oftentimes in tea. Yerba luisa is the lemon verbena that's used. And what they do is they cook your berries, and then they would blend them and strain the seeds out of them. They would make tea, like a tea concoction out of the pineapple skins, cinnamon, canela, which is cane sugar, usually in block form. They would then strain that out as well. They would then use some of that tea to make a slurry with 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 the corn flour. They would mix that corn flour, and then they would blend those things together. They'd add in chunks of your fruit, your berries, strawberries, pineapple chunks, the blended berries and blueberries and mora berries. They would add in the tea that was made from using the skins of the pineapple and cinnamon and your other warm spices, cloves and anise, and you would mix that together. And so as a result, you get this thick kind of drink that when you drink it, because it's got the chunks, it would be like taking a thick corn kind of liquid and then adding fruit cocktail to it. So it's got chunks of fruit, and oftentimes it's served warm. And it's this beautiful purple color, and that is often served several weeks before the holiday. You start seeing the guagua de pan and colada morada, and you could pay $1 and get a warm cup of colada morada and the bread babies. And so it's a thick and rich drink that in itself is really a feast, but it's one that you typically see during this particular holiday. Now, why these foods, the bread and the fruit? For many of the indigenous cultures, food is not just about the physical nourishment. It really is the bridge between worlds. It's the idea of the departed coming to visit the living and hosting them. And you're hosting them with these special treats. They are sharing them with their loved ones or their family that have been departed, creating this really attitude of togetherness and gratitude. Families often prepare foods, and in addition to these sweet treats, they share recipes and the traditions from generation to generation. They may have slight variations. Different people prepare colada morada differently. I've talked to several people, and each one has a little bit of different way, and those become those family cultures. In Black American culture, it would be equivalent to which one is the person, who makes the potato salad, or who makes the macaroni and cheese, or the various things that someone does it in their own special way, in their own special flair. This is kind of the way that those recipes would be passed down in families. Teaching really the children, the future generations, to appreciate the heritage and the culture, even in how they do food and how the food becomes part of the symbols. They often take these offerings to the cemetery. They may leave it at a table with the bread babies and the colada morada as the feast for the souls. It's common for them to take a moment to speak to their departed loved ones as they're sharing these treats with them. These also might be some of the treats that they leave for Mama Huaca, to thank her for the protection that she's given, the guidance that she's given in the journey there. They'd share meals, hearty meals, that also would be that living and the dead connection. And then leaving the offering to the spirits as a way of reciprocity. Again, that aini, that this is the reciprocity of leaving the sweets, acknowledging the guidance and the support that the spirits have been giving in real life. And so these are part of the textures and the tastes and the symbols of the celebration. The bread babies and the colada morada provide that opportunity for families to celebrate life and remember their loved ones in a way that's warm, but also nourishing and deeply rooted in the traditions. The family stories, again, this is a part of bringing the culture into the contemporary generations, that the folklores help them to hold on to the symbology, the characters, um, and really the heritage. In addition to the family stories, they're telling stories about the ancestors. They're letting the previous generations know about their parents and grandparents and great grandparents and the heritage of their people. But this is also a time where they're sharing the folklore and the legends. Those are things that are also part of the cultural sharing of this particular holiday. For instance, the tales of Mama Waka. And there's variations of that story, lots of different variations that may be shared. There's also um, the talk about the Cantunya legend. That was one that I found out about. That's another popular legend, and it's a story about a skilled indigenous craftsman named Cantunya, who was tasked with building a stone courtyard here in Ecuador. The tale for him that he made a deal with the devil, agreeing that if the devil's helpers completed the courtyard by dawn, he would give up his soul. But the legend says that Catunya outsmarted the devil by secretly removing a single stone from the courtyard, ensuring that the devil would never complete the work. The clever and defiant act has been passed down through generations as a symbol of resilience and intelligence, especially among indigenous Ecuadorians who face challenges from colonial power. I found that lore, that particular legend very interesting because often in some of the other celebrations that I've been learning about, there's symbology of the devil. Part of it, it seems to me, to have been a hidden in plain sight rebellion to the colonizers. Oftentimes, that symbology, when they used it, was a secret reference to the colonizers and the things that were being done during the 16th century when the Spanish would have come into this area. And so it was very interesting to see that symbology again as part of the legend of subtle, but right in their face. And I wonder if this too might not have been one of those expressions of resistance, even in the folklore. Many of the stories and the folklore and the legends were stories that were intended to create a sense of unity and pride, really exposing and illuminating the connections of their family history with their culture and their traditions. The ideas that they held alive, that the connection between families, that you're part of something bigger, a shared culture that's kept alive by them sharing through words and through memories, by having these events and celebrating them with new generations, to be able to educate and inform them and give them an appreciation of the culture. For the children, the stories are exciting. When I went to one of the performances at one of the Aboriginal artifact museum, there were costumes, masks, fascinating kinds of masks. There were drums and instruments that also went along with the storytelling, describing the ancestors and the heroes. And so it's this kind of magic and reverence but definitely celebration. The storytelling becomes the way to be able to laugh and to remember, but also to be able to pass down wisdom. One of the things that I took from this and really made this feel so powerful to me was really that connection between the living and the dead in a very personal and emotional way. That individuals hold to those connections in ways that seem very positive and affirming to their lives. Being able to see the bridge really in a way where families are able to feel close to those ancestors, to gain a deeper understanding for their roots and their heritage, but also to realize the strength of passing down those values to generations. This is a family celebration where everyone in the family is involved in participating. There's a deep respect for the ancestors and the idea that they're not gone, that they live on not only in our memories and our stories, in the values that they help us shape, but also in an active way of guiding and protecting us. And so the storytelling part really was one of the parts of this celebration that I found to be very moving. And then really the city that is embracing of this. There's so much rich culture that is expressed. Everyone is involved in participating. We were going on an activity. I had some visitors here in the past week, and we just happened to get off our bus at the bus terminal, and they were celebrating. They were big pots of warmed colada morada and bread babies that were being handed out for free. There was dancing that was happening. Even some of the dignitaries that were there were dancing and enjoying the music and the festivity. And that really is a common thing here. I've made comments several times that for the celebration and the history and the heritage to be so commonly expressed really is thrilling to me as I learn parts of a new culture that are unfamiliar to me, new traditions that are unfamiliar to me as well. The other part is Cuenca is a large city. It's the third largest city in the country. Um, and the ceremonies that are participated in here, just even as part of our tourism, where there is a respect and an effort to be able to share these traditions in a way that everyone can participate in. It feels welcoming, even for me as an outsider being here, welcoming to participate in these activities and festivities, and it truly has enriched my life. And so this, like all of the other celebrations that I participated in, was another wonderful opportunity to go a little bit deeper into the culture, a little bit deeper into the understanding of the symbols of the culture. I knew I liked bread babies just because the idea of it just makes me smile. And the decorations of it just makes me smile. But to understand more fully some of the cultural significance that these holidays have, where it's not just fun. It is fun and sweet treats and the excitement of sharing and breaking bread together. But that there also is deep spiritual significance in maintaining the value that show them that balance between life and death, between the ancestors and their active participation in their lives. And that has been truly a joy to explore with one more holiday here. I could go on and say more and more, but I hope that gives you a greater understanding of the Dia de los Fuentes that's celebrated here on the 2nd of November. A little bit different spin than the Day of the Dead that might be celebrated in Mexico. A little bit of a different spin from the All Saints Day or All Souls Day as it's practiced specifically in the Catholic Church. But that this too is part of this rich culture. And for me, it's understanding even understanding how it's been merged with the Catholic culture, to be able to understand better the people and the symbols and to really be able to appreciate it. And that is part of the mission for the Atlantic Institute, that by us learning about the diversity of other cultures, one, we can gain an appreciation, but also increase our respect for the value that that can bring even to my life. The idea of recognizing the life and death cycles, accepting that none of us are expected to come out of this life existence alive, and realizing that there's a place in the culture of holding our ancestors close and taking from the wisdom and the guidance that they may give us from the spiritual realm. And so it's been my pleasure to share with you another of the wonderful culture that I'm finding here in South America with these particular holidays, specifically the Dia de los Difuntos. And so at this point, if there's any questions or comments or feedback or insight maybe that you have on some of the holidays and the traditions, maybe we'll have a few minutes to chit chat before we say goodbye for this field trip. Hopefully we've not disturbed you too much with the technical difficulties. Sometimes it happens and we try to continue on through. So I'm grateful, Christina, for helping and pitching in with the media, but for your patience today with the technical issues that we're having, partly because of the drought situation that we're experiencing. This is a tragedy here in the Amazonian region, with the water levels being in some places lower than they've seen since 1940. Mhm. So any questions today? Any questions, any comments? Feel free to unmute and chime in. Uh-oh, Christina?
Yeah, I had a question.
Okay.
So
Questions?
first of all, but there's somebody pulling into the yard, so let me just, okay.
Okay.
So Liza's wondering if they can have your contact information. Her parents are from Ecuador and she would love to learn more.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if they can see mine. I'm not on Zoom anymore. So my name, there's not many Laranas in Ecuador, but Larana Hughes, you can find me on Facebook is the easiest. And you can see some of the escapades that happen on a regular basis here. Some of the
I will say
parades
following her
recently.
on Facebook is quite fun. So
Yeah, I take you on lots of field trips outside of Atlantic Institute. This week it's been the parades, and I think there was some of the dancing and some of the sites. So feel free to reach out to me on Messenger there. That's the easiest way, probably for you to connect with me. My name is spelled Larahna, different than La Rana, which means the frog, which gets me into very interesting conversations here in Ecuador. There's not
yes.
many people named the frog. And I explain often that my mother did not speak Spanish when she named me.
I heard you
So
say that to
definitely reach
somebody
out to me.
in the video recently. I heard you say that in Spanish. I picked up at you were saying that to tu madre. No, and I was like, oh yeah, she's telling everybody. So Randall said so many specific differences from Mexico and some similarities. Thank you. Linda
Absolutely.
had that question. And then Havas said great workarounds for the tech challenges. Thank you, Havas. We have think it's stuff together.
We're doing our
All right.
best.
And then Randall said, or those apartments like small tombs for bones. I think in Bolivia they have only the bones that they take out and clean at this time and redecorate the front.
Yeah,
I think I said that right, Randall. If I didn't,
when I went
try
to
that correctly.
the Artifacts Museum this past week,
Yeah, that's what we did. We
they
did
were
that other museum.
showing us the artifacts of how the ceremonial would be done. In some cases, they have a small, almost like a chimenea, where they burn, and then in the pottery, they would put the bones in the pottery. Even
bones are precious.
babies would have small, what do they call them? Sarcophagus in like Egypt, but like clay vessels where
Right.
it would be just the bones or the remains of the departed, and sometimes there would be toys and trinkets and other things that would be put in there with them, but that they would be in those pottery, and so that would be a bit about what's in there. Now, the traditional burial, or other ways of doing it, but the indigenous ways would be that very thing, and they'd be sealed into the ceramic vessels. Also, it's different even outside of Cuenca. The traditions might be a little bit different based on the cultural differences of the various regions. So definitely some differences from like Mexican Day of the Dead traditions, but also some overlapping similarities.
So I really I enjoyed watching them how they made the sweetbreads. That was very cool. So tell me this colada morada, how
Any other questions?
the colada morada, can you let me see. How exactly does that taste?
Okay, Christina, am I still there with you?
You are, but you're frozen. So I was just very curious. Oh, she can't.
Nope, I got my
Chat.
signal. You
Well,
got quiet on me.
we might have reached the end of our time with you, Lorana. We did good. My video is off. Turn on video. All right. I think we finished our end, which was perfect timing. Perfect timing. All right, I'm gonna just go ahead and stop. I'm gonna have to hang up on you. All right. Stop share. All right, you guys, I was really very curious what that colada morada tasted like because that was quite interesting. I've never boiled pineapple skins and things. That was just very different for me. I was very curious how that was. So I guess we'll figure that out another time. And it was very thick, kind of like if you put that thicket kind of stuff in with something. I was curious how that drinks, how well it drinks. So I'm gonna send her a message. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. I'm gonna go ahead and hit stop recording.